What's going on, everybody? JR from JR's Cars here, and today, as you can tell with the hood up, we're working on the edge. So stay tuned, and I'm going to show you how to change the valve cover gaskets on this. So like I said, we're going to be replacing the valve cover gaskets on this. This is specific to the Ford Edge and the Lincoln MKX. But it also works for the Taurus, for the Sable, any of the cars that have this 3.5 liter Duratec engine in it. So sit back, relax, take a seat, grab a beer, whatever you want to do, and check it out. Alrighty, so before we get started here, just give you a quick overview of it. Again, this is the 3.5 liter Duratec V-6 from Ford. I'm going to need to replace both the front and the rear, obviously. What I found was my wife was driving the truck, and she was noticing like a burning smell inside. Of course, it smells like oil. So I just took my hand and put it down there, and you can see there that it's got oil leaking from here. Not so much from the front one, but the rear one is the worst. I wish I could get you underneath the car to actually show you, but it's so tight in there that I wasn't really able to get a camera in there to actually show you where it's leaking from, because it's coming down the back, it's hitting the exhaust manifold, it's dripping down the side of the engine, and it's pooling up on the bottom side where the pan is and hitting the exhaust. There's like a little Y tube underneath the oil pan that's getting all oil on it too, so it's burning, it's smelling, things like that. So one thing that you definitely want to get if you're working on any kind of car is one of these magnetic trays. It's great, it'll hold any tool there is. You just pop it on there and it will stick, and if you put any of the bolts or nuts or screws or anything in this thing, they'll stay in there and you're not going to lose things, because there's going to be a lot of them to take off with this. All right, so the first thing we're going to end up doing is we're going to take this gigantic, useless silencer out of here and the intake tube. This thing, this is a really throaty engine. I like the way this engine sounds. They put all this crap in here just to quiet it down. It's so annoying. Eventually, this may go, but for the time being, unplug your mass airflow sensor. There's a little clip on the bottom, pulls right off. There's the clips around the air filter. And this should slide right out here. Okay. Then what I did was I also loosened this here, so that way we can get this out in pieces, make it a little bit easier to handle. But take your air filter out. That one's not coming out though. All right, the hell with it. That's fine. There's a little clip down here. This is that vent tube that goes to the front of the valve cover. That just pulls back. There's a little clip that's there and pops right off. You have to take that off. And then I already loosened the tube going back to the throttle body, so I should be able to just twist this after removing this vent tube here and pull this right off. Get this out of the way. That's one gigantic piece of unnecessary silence. Now we have a little bit more room to work over here. So if you look in here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tube off. That was that vent tube that was connected to the intake tube. You can see there's a little clip right here. You just push that clip over, the little gray piece right here, push that over and pull it out. Comes right out, nice and simple like that. All right, so the next thing we're going to end up taking off is we have to take off the upper plenum, because we need to be able to get to the back valve cover. And in order to get to that back valve cover, all this stuff has to get out of the way. It's really not that bad. It's not that difficult. Don't get crazy over it. It's a very simple thing to remove. So you have a couple screws here, 2 there. You have 1 up here, 1 down here, and then you have 2 on the side over here. You just have to lift up this this wire loom here, and that'll expose that there. So getting all that out of the way will give this plenum enough room to come up, and there's a vacuum line on the back of the plenum that we need to take off too. So let me take this off, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, now on the throttle body, you can see you have a clip here. This is for your throttle plate. And then way down here, you should be able to see it right there. That also needs to come out because that's what's mounting the throttle body to the block. So that needs to come out so that way this whole assembly will move too. So we'll take this out, we'll take that screw out, and then we should be good to go here. You're also going to have to take this vacuum line off because this vacuum line goes to the throttle body too. So we should be able to just take this, pop that clip off, and then pull this out. So I lied, there is one more. So as you can see, I got that bolt right down there out. If you look behind here, you can see it right in the back there. It's not going to focus. There it is. That bolt right there has to come out too. And then you can see here, this is the vacuum line I was talking about. But what I was able to do is just get my hand back here. And you can see that right there. That basically just lifts off. I believe, if I'm correct here, that goes to the PCV valve because that's what it feels like. But we'll see once we get this out of place. There's actually, this is that hose that I was talking about that you just pulled straight out, and that is to the PCV valve, which is right back there. This here is also connected on the left rear side of the intake manifold. And if you look, let's see if we can get you here. That's where it plugs in. So basically what you just have to do is you just have to push it in and then pull the clip out. This whole intake will come out. To the side over here, we can pull it straight out here, and then there's this vacuum hose right here that you have to unclip and remove too, and then finally, I promise, this is going to come out. Like I said, there it is. All right, so it looks like it's leaking a little bit around the intake gaskets here too, so I think I'm probably going to go and get a set of those as well. So now basically what you want to do, we're going to start in the back first because obviously it's the hardest one to get to. You're going to want to take your coils out. There's these 8mm screws on the top. You have, this is that line that I showed you before, right? You want to disconnect your line right here, which is going to your PCV valve. You disconnect that that fitting, the electrical connector, and then you're going to pop on each one of these. Actually, I'll show you on the front. You see on each one of these coil packs, there's this little clip, this little red clip here. You pull that down, you push it in, and you wiggle it loose, which is kind of hard to do with one finger. There we go. That's going to give you access to pull this coil pack out, and you have to pull these coil packs out in order to get the valve cover off. So We're going to do that in the back. We're going to pull each one of the coils out, and I have a brand new set of plugs to go in there when I put everything back together too. So I'm going to unplug those, take those out. We're going to get these wire harnesses out of the way. They just pop right off like that, and we could set them aside, right? And then that will give us access to all these screws here that hold the valve cover into place, and then we'll pop this valve cover off. All right, so there's two things you don't want to forget. One is your cam sensor up here. You want to make sure that you unplug that. And then what I ended up doing actually was, this is the whole wire loom, right? This, I disconnected it from here, but then I found that it was in the way in the back. So what I did was, you can see in the back there, that blue connector right there, that's the rear O2 sensor. That's the connector for that. And then the other connector for the other O2 sensors here. I removed both of those. And then what I did was, there's two connectors down here too. One that mates up to the block. I think it's the knock sensor over there. And then, yeah, so you can see it right there. And then this connector right here. Those two I removed because then that gives me lots of flexibility with the wire loom. You can get that way out of your way, and if you really wanted to move it even farther, you could take the lines off the injectors and really move this out of the way. I found that this is enough room. This should be more than enough to get in there to get these bolts out. So now we're at the point where I'm going to take all these bolts for the valve cover off. Everything is clear of it, and this valve cover is going to come off now. Alrighty, well, she is out. And judging by how hard and brittle this gasket is, it's really bad. It just basically tore when I took it out. That's the source of my leak, obviously, because you can see there's all oil residue here. This is the back side. Is here. And then if we get this out of the way for a second, you can take a look back here and see how bad it looks. Look at all the oil all over the outside of the gasket. You can see that. Look at that. That's all the oil that's been leaking down the backside of the engine. That's your exhaust manifold. So it's been leaking oil back here, down the manifold, burning it off, pushing it down the engine. And then whatever didn't get burned off, see, I mean, that was just, listen to that. Here, let's see if we can get you by the mic. Basically, it's snapping off. It's so hard, and it's just brittle. So 158,000 miles, that's what I'll end up doing. But one thing you're really going to have to watch when you get this back one off, if you decide not to take the cowl off, which is what I'm doing right now, this is your cam sensor, right? This is stationary. It stays in place. You can see what's left of this gasket here. That has to come off because we have a new gasket for it. It comes in the set. But when you lift the valve cover off, you have to make sure that you're lifting it over the cam sensor here so you don't disrupt it and you don't hurt it, because that's not a cheap fix. So what we're going to do, now that we have this open like this, number one, I'm going to replace those plugs. So I'm going to get that done now. Not going to bother showing you that. It's not a big deal. But we're going to take this off. We're going to get all this gasket out of here. And then we're going to get these gaskets out of here because they get replaced in the kit too. This is the cam sensor one. You can see it's all just destroyed. And then these are for each one of the plugs. So let me get the plugs in, and then we'll get at taking these out and replacing these, cleaning up the valve cover gasket, getting our new gasket on there, and putting it back on. But before I get to that, I just wanted to show you what I'm actually replacing the plugs with. These are my go-to plugs. I usually end up any one of my cars, I end up using NGKs. Usually in the past, I used to use Motorcraft ones, but Motorcraft in the Fords, AC Delcos in my GMs, and then for my Dodges, I used to use Champion plugs. What I found is that the Motorcraft ones, there's been a lot of irregularities with their quality lately. I'm not really impressed with it. I usually always get good quality with the NGKs. I've had no failures, pretty good success with them, and they've been a really good plug. So if you're looking for a set of plugs, I highly suggest looking for a set of NGKs. And the funny thing is, the plugs that I'm taking out, they were NGKs. Look at that. All right, so you can see we got it all cleaned up. We got the nice new gasket in there. And like I said before, this is the location right here where these flat spots are in the gasket. That's going to meet up with the timing cover that's split in the timing cover and the head. And having that silicone in there is going to seal this area up right here. What you also have to do, which comes in the kit, is replace the gasket that's on each one of the bolts here with a new one. So what I usually like to do is I'll grab a screwdriver and just pry it behind it, get it in there. You can use a little pick if you wanted to. Let's see, you get it in there, you just pop that old one right off. All right, old one comes off. You want to take your new gasket and put it on there. So what I do is I put it in here, and then I'll get a socket that fits over top of it, but fits snug up against here. And then what I'll do is I'll just take it, I'll give it a little bit of a push and a twist, and there it is. It's on there nice and easy. Alrighty, so now what we have to do is we have to get these old gaskets out of here, right? So you can see how these are put in. Basically, the easiest way that I found was to grab, you could use a flathead screwdriver, or in my case, I'm using just a blunt chisel that I have that's no good anymore. What I do is I put it in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bang away at it to basically push this in towards the center, because what it is there's a metal ring on the inside of this that you have to compress in order to get this out easily. So take a look here. All right, so now you can see what it looks like there. Oops, sorry. That's what it looks like. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a pair of cutters, and then I'm going to grab it from this side. I'm going to give it a twist. Right? Twist it twice. It'll pop right through. And there you go. That's what it looks like when it comes out. That's nice and clean now. So now we'll get to the others. There's 4 of them. You can't forget this one over here. This is your camshaft sensor. We'll replace these, and then I'll show you what I do to get them back in. All right, so here's what the new one looks like. Okay, what you want to do is you want to make sure that this side is the side that goes up. So when you have the valve cover gasket like this, it should be sitting in there like this. You shouldn't see the cupped end. You should see the cupped end facing upwards. So what I found was a 30 millimeter axle nut socket. Works perfectly because it fits right over the top of it. It's like a perfect fit. All right, so you can see that fits perfectly around it. So what I do is I take it, I put it in here, I get it as square as I can. I'll put that on top of it, and then give it a good old whack. Okay. What you want to do is you want to keep looking at the back side. You want it to sit a little bit lower than flush. Just keep looking. All right, so that's looking good right now. You can see that in there. All right, you can see how that looks. And then if you look in the top, it's almost flush with the rim. You can see this in here where there's that little lip in the top. You want that to be flush with the top. So I'm going to do the other ones, and then we'll get this cleaned up and put it back in. And just so you see there, you see that little dot in the center. That's the RTV that I have in there. You don't need much. A little dab will do you. Okie dokie, there she is. She's all back together. So, as you can see, I've got the new gaskets in here. You can see the new valve cover gasket, or I should say, some people call this a cam cover. It just depends. Whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. So what I did was I got everything back together. What you have to do over here when you're going, have to beat the hell out of it, but you're definitely going to have to give it a little bit of extra force just to get it over that gasket, that new gasket that's there. So again, you have to make sure that you plug everything back in. So get your cam sensor back in, hook up your wiring to your screws here. If you disconnected your injectors, make sure that those are all plugged in. Go back over here, make sure that you plug this connector back in, and the one on the side of the engine, that knock sensor. And then you want to make sure that you plug everything back in back here. Your oxygen sensor, put your coils back in, make sure that you plug your coils back in. That would be a big time problem. And then make sure you plug back in the connector to your PCV valve. And then leave this disconnected. Obviously, when we put the intake back on, that's going to go back in. So I think at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the intake back on, and then I'll work on that front one, because the intake isn't going to get in the way of the front valve cover gasket. All right, and there we go. Intake is back on. When you put the intake back on, you want to start from the center, work your way out. So start with this bolt, go with this one, corner, corner, corner. All right, so you also want to make sure that there's that vacuum hose that's in the back, that you put that back on there. You put the hose going from the intake tube back on the PCV valve. There's that connector that connects to the back side of where that PCV hose is. You want to make sure that that's put back in there. You have that bolt that holds down the back side of the intake. That goes back in. You want to make sure that your cable going into the drive-by-wire, the throttle body here, is back in. You put that bolt back in the bottom there to anchor the throttle body. And then you just want to give it a once over. This vacuum hose was one that we had removed too. You want to make sure that that goes back into place, and this clips back in. So now with that done, it's time to get to that front valve cover. All right, so the front one isn't any different than the rear one. It's the same thing. It has the cam sensor. You have to take that out. You have the coils. You have to take those out. Just move whatever wiring you need to out of your way. The only thing that's different is this big mega pack right here, which honestly, you can get up underneath it and just push up on it. It pushes into the valve cover itself. You can just pry that up and pull that out of there, and that'll pretty much take care of that. So instead of boring you with that, because I already showed you how to do the back, we're going to get this done like this. And there it is. And the best part of it all, no extra parts. I call that a thumbs up. So now it's time to see if it runs right. Make sure that I didn't miss anything when I was putting everything back together. All right, so I call that a success. So do me a favor, if you like this kind of content, give me a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies too. So I hope everybody has a good Easter, and I hope everyone's staying safe out there as well. And I'll catch you soon in the next video.